folks, Brian here for the Black Tux. Weddings should be memorable, but not for the groom's lack of style. Ain't that the truth? That's why our friends at the Black Tux design rental suits and tuxedos that you'll love wearing at your wedding. So if you end up getting featured on a list of 23 epic wedding fails, at least you'll know you look good for your close-up. But the best part about the Black Tux is that they have an easy online ordering process that brings your suit or tuxedo straight to you. That's pretty cool. Just pick a style at theblacktux.com and request a free home try-on so that you can feel the fit and quality before you commit. And if online isn't your style, they have showrooms all over the country where you can find your fit and play in your luck. From there, they'll ship your order 2 weeks before your wedding so you can check it one last time. Talk about commitment. Yeah, that's true. Over 5,000 five-star reviews across Wedding Wire, The Knot, and their own website agree. You won't find another rental experience or designs like the ones you'll find at the Black Tux. Grooms, if you want your wedding to be remembered for the right reasons, visit theblacktux.com/listen. That's theblacktux.com/listen for $20 off your purchase. Walk, don't run, be safe to theblacktux.com/listen to find a look for you and your crew. Thebblacktux.com, formal wear for the moment.
I'm home. This is the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast, an introspective look into video gaming from the classic era until today. Now here is your host, Brian.
Hey folks, what's going on out there? Brian here, and this is episode number 8 of the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. Check through social media and emails, nothing this time out. So if you want to get a hold of the show in any way, you can get a hold of me at arcadeaddictbrian, that's all one word, at gmail.com. Also, there is a phone number for voicemails. That number is 734-743-2433. Also, I have a social media footprint going with this show. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. On Facebook, all you have to do is search Confessions of an Arcade Addict. On Twitter, my handle is at arcadeaddict_B. On Instagram, it's arcadeaddictbrian, all one word, of course. And on Tumblr, it is tumblr.com/blog/confessions of an arcade addict. So there are ways to get a hold of the show. Also, you can get a hold of me on Anchor if you listen there as well. That is anchor.fm/COAA. So if you want to get a hold of me, share some stories, have any ideas for the show, any games that you want to have reviewed, don't be shy, get a hold of me and we'll see if we can make that happen. So without any further ado, we shall go into top 10s. Top 10s. 1982. Now, in episode 7 I did 1981, and that was probably the hardest top 10 list I had to do because so many good games came out in 1981. This one is no different. 1982, the games are getting better, more diverse. You're seeing almost every sort of genre. Either if it wasn't invented in 82, it was certainly represented in 82. There were some games that came out that were absolutely mind blowing. Some were, you know, fun to play. Others were a combination of the two. Some were very intimidating, which I'll get into in Are You Experienced? So, without any further ado, let's get rolling. Once again, this is a top 10 list of my personal favorite games from a particular year. They're not in any sort of order, just order in they're just in order of how I type them out in my show notes file. Um, like I've said, ever since I came up with this segment, it would take too much brain power to actually kind of try to list them from 10 to 1. And like I've said before, I don't want to expend that kind of energy. So, let's get going. Tron. Now, this game blew everybody away. It's one of the few games that's a movie tie in that came out right after the movie did. I remember, I think Tron came out in the spring of '82 or either early summer of '82. And I think by the end of summer of '82 or thereabouts, the video game had hit because everybody was talking about this game. Everybody was playing this game. Um, I will do a more in depth description of it in Are You Experienced in a future episode. But basically, the game is more or less four games in one. You have, of course, the ubiquitous light cycles. Um, you have the tank game. You have the uh, trying to enter the NPC cone. And you have to basically shoot your way through blocks, which are moving either from left to right or right to left at particular speeds. And you basically have to blast a line to move your character up into the cone to get past the level. And then you have the grid bugs level, which is basically you have to shoot your way through grid bugs to get to the IO tower. And as the game goes on, it gets harder. So I love this game. I still play it to this day, and the funny part is I'm actually better at it now than I was in 1982 when I'm 13 years old. It's kind of weird that way. But yeah, this game was extremely popular when it came to the Trumbull Mall arcade. Um, I don't think Spanky's had it. I know that Milford Rec had it. I don't know if the arcade at Milford, or excuse me, Connecticut Post Mall. I don't know if it had a Tron machine. I can't remember. I want to say it did, but I'm not certain. Um, like I said, it was always fun to play, always challenging to play, and I still enjoy it to this day, even though it's over 35 years later. Dig Dug. This one and its counterpart slash nemesis machine, Mr. Do. I might as well link these two together since I'm talking about it. But Dig Dug was a really popular game. I mean, I liked it okay, but I wasn't all that keen on it. It wasn't all that hot, and it wasn't that the hotness to me in 1982. Um, but it's basically like a Mr. Do game. It's basically takes place underground, and you have to deal with monsters, and of course they deal with them in different ways. With Dig Dug, you basically have this sphere, or not sphere, spear, I should say, that you throw, and it's connected to a pump. And when you hit a monster with it, you have to either hold the button down, and your dig dug will pump the monster full of air. It's either you can do that, or the expert way to do it is to run towards the monster, hit the button, tap the button to where it throws the spear and it hits it and will inflate the monster, and then you immediately let go of the button and you hit it again, and you're able to like blow up an enemy faster that way. You can also kill the monsters with rocks. There were ways to draw almost all of the monsters into one particular area, and you would drop a rock and kill them for major points. Um, and the game got really difficult. Probably past, I want to say, level 10. Level 10 is when it really started getting hard. Okay. Like I said, there was a big rivalry between Mr. Do players and Dig Dug players. So let me describe Mr. Do first. Mr. Do. Um, this is one of my all-time favorite arcade games. Definitely top 20, maybe even top 10. Um, this one, you are a clown who is trying to dispatch enemies with his Powerball, while gathering cherries and also luring monsters to where you can drop apples on them, and also keeping an eye out for the monster that will have uh, a letter in it that it corresponds to extra, which means if you kill that monster and you fill in all the letters, you get an extra Mr. Do. You don't get free Mr. Do's when you achieve a certain score. So to me, this required a little bit more skill and a little bit more planning than Mr. Do. I mean, they're very similar games, but they're very different in their execution. But I remember in 82, probably going as far as probably 83 or 84, there was like a rivalry between Mr. Do and Dig Dug players. Each one thought opposite game was um, the opposite game was inferior to the game that they preferred, and there was a lot of trash talk. There certainly was. Um, let's see. Trumbull Mall Arcade had Mr. Do, had a Dig Dug machine. I think they had them both at the same time. So you had your choice. Um, the crew I was hanging out with, including my friend Mark, they were really good at both games, and I learned a lot from both of them. But yeah, I mean, don't try to make me choose because, I will take Mr. Do 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100. Donkey Kong Jr. This is the first sequel in the Donkey Kong slash Mario franchise. Donkey Kong, of course, came out in 81. One of the top 10 arcade games of all time, if not top 5, maybe even top 3. Donkey Kong Jr. was a radically different game in that you were in control of Donkey Kong's son trying to rescue Donkey Kong from Mario. It was a complete reversal of what Donkey Kong was. Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong, it was Mario, aka Jumpman, trying to rescue his girlfriend from Donkey Kong. And in Donkey Kong Jr., now you're Donkey Kong's son trying to rescue his father from Mario. It was a really, really, it basically turned everything on its head. The gameplay is harder, much harder, completely different, required, different, radically different strategies, and it was fun, but it could be really frustrating to play. Um, I remember when it came out. I'm trying to remember. I think Trumbull Mall had it. I'm not 100% certain. I want to say it did, but my memory's a little hazy about it. But Milford Rec certainly had it, and a couple other places certainly had it. I think Spanky's had it as well. Joust. This one, yeah, this one I'll cover in Are You Experienced as well. But when this one came out, this one was just everybody wanted to play it. I mean, especially once you figured out the killing the pterodactyls infinitely, and racking up these ridiculous scores without doing a whole lot of work. So Basically, you are a knight who basically rides a flying ostrich, and you're basically flying through the flying around the screen, trying to joust with other knights who are riding basically buzzards. And the trick was you had to get your lance higher than the opponent's lance to win the joust. And then when you won the joust, the knight that you killed turned into an egg, and you basically had to get that egg before enough time passed to where it would turn into another knight, which was harder to kill. There were red knights, gray knights, and dark blue knights. And if you killed a red knight and you let the egg land on the ground and you didn't pick it up immediately, after a certain amount of time, the egg would hatch and it would show a silver knight. And then a buzzard would fly from off screen and would land on the same level that the knight was on. He'd walk towards it, and once he touched it, the knight would mount the buzzard, and then he would be back in the fight, except now it's a harder knight to kill. This game is hard. It's very hard. And I mean, I was halfway decent at it, but I mean, I knew guys who could put up, what, 300,000 points easy. I mean, never mind the infinite pterodactyl trick, which I'll cover in Are You Experience, but Williams did come out with an update to the game to take that out of it. Jungle King slash Jungle Hunt. Now, this one I loved from the beginning. Um, I'm trying to remember the first place I saw it. I think it was Spanky's. It was either Spanky's or it was the not the bus station, the train station in in downtown Bridgeport. But Jungle King was the first iteration of this game, and the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate basically threatened Taito, excuse me, with a lawsuit. So he changed it from Jungle King, which was basically Tarzan, including the Tarzan call. You know, of course, it's a direct rip off of Tarzan. There's no court on the face of the planet that wouldn't have uh, found in Edgar Rice Burroughs' estate at all. That just would have been open and shut case. So what ended up happening is later in that year they changed it to Jungle Hunt, which was basically your prototypical jungle explorer with the khaki shirt, the shorts, and the hat. And basically, the object of it is still the same, which is to rescue your girlfriend from the cannibal tribes. And it was one, two, three. It was four screens to get to them. And Taito games, Taito games could be extremely unforgiving. I mean, I've had my run-ins with this game, but I was actually pretty good at it at one point. I mean, the hardest part about uh, there are two screens that are hardest. The first one is the second screen, which is basically you're swimming, uh, swimming in this lake slash river, and there are man-eating crocodiles trying to kill you. You're armed with a knife, and as they get close, you have to hit the knife button to, stab with your knife to kill them for points. And once you got through a couple of sequences, they got really, really hard and really fast. So so the first screen is basically like a Tarzan screen. It's basically vine swinging, and you basically have to time it to where when you jump onto a vine and you're swinging, and then you time it to get to the next vine and the next one and the next one until you reach the end of the stage, which shows your man diving into the water to start the river stage or the lake stage. After the lake stage, you're running uphill, and basically rocks are coming down and trying to kill you, and you either have to jump over them or duck under them or run under them. oh, you get points, and after a while, after a time, you make it to the top, and then the last screen, which is basically you have to jump over the two cannibals to get to your girlfriend who is tied up on a vine hanging from a tree limb over a boiling pot of water. Stereotypical, right? But you basically had to time it to where you had the space, to get over the cannibals, and they would be stabbing upwards with their spears every so often. So you could actually, you think you have it timed right, and then of course, the cannibal stabs up, and then you end up being dead. So it was, once you got past the first one, you had to jump over, basically time it so as you jumped over the second, you would touch your girlfriend, and that would be the end of the stage, and you would go on to the next set of screens, which is harder. The vines swing faster. And I think after you get past the second set of screens, now there's an ape swinging from the bottom of the vine. If you touch him, he knocks you off. So it just got harder and harder as you progressed. Let's see. Robotron. I will cover this in Are You Experienced? This game was just like Williams could hardly do any wrong from 1980 until I'd say probably about 1988. I mean, between their pinball machines and their arcade machines, they were doing very well for themselves. But Robotron is probably one of the top three games that Williams ever put out. I would argue that Defender is more iconic than Robotron, but some people would disagree with me. But we'll get into that in Are You Experienced? Star Trek Mission Combat Simulator, I think, is the subtitle. This was put out by Sega in 1982. This went kind of hand in hand, sort of, kind of, with it would pay homage to like the original Star Trek, but it was more the modern Star Trek, with the Star Trek the Motion Picture, which came out in '79, and of course Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which came out in 1982. I want to say this game came out after The Wrath of Khan. I'm not 100% certain, and the information is a little bit murky, but if anybody out there has any definitive information, drop me a line because I want to know. Basically, you're the Starship Enterprise, and you are going through various sectors, destroying Klingon ships, protecting your star bases, which also give your give your Enterprise more shields, more photon torpedoes, and more warp drive. And you also had these saucers that would fly sort of in an opposite direction of where your ship was, and you could actually lure it close so you could shoot it for points. If it actually touched you, it would drain your shields, which, as you're trying to fight and destroy Klingon battle cruisers, that's a bit of a problem. But I'm going to cover that in our experience as well. Let's see, pole position. Man, when this came out, forget it. Oh, everybody lost their minds when pole position came out. It was a wonderful racing game. Basically, you're driving the Formula One car at Fuji Speedway in Japan, and basically have to drive as fast as you can. First, not only to gain pole position in the actual race, but also to pass as many cars as you can during that race. And if you're able to complete, I think it's 3 laps, if not four, you win the game. And uh, each car that you pass would be points, and also how much time was left on the clock would be more points. Shout out to John's Arcade because he's got like one of the highest scores on pole position in the game. There's only so many points you can score, and I think there's like one guy who has like more points than what John's put up, but I've seen him play pole position and he's really good at it. I think I beaten that game. I can count the number of times on one hand. But yeah, it's wonderful to play. The arcade in Brighton has it. I every once in a while, if I'm feeling lucky, I'll jump on it and play it. Qbert. This quirky game was one of the most iconic and one of the most popular of 1982. It was quaint. It was cute. It was challenging. Sometimes borderline unfair if you really wanted to get down to brass tacks. But it was one of the most popular games of that year, and to me it was always challenging. I couldn't get past level 3, and basically what you're this weird looking creature with a snout with a hollow snout for a nose, uh, orange colored with eyes and feet, and basically you're on this three-dimensional pyramid, and you're hopping from platform to platform on the pyramid, and you're turning the platforms different colors. If you once you turn all of the platforms on the pyramid that color, you win the round and you go on to the next round. I think you go through 4 rounds before you go to the next level. I think it's 4. It might be 5, but I think it's 4. And you're you're dealing with not only Coily the snake, who's your main nemesis, and you're dealing with uh, red balls that are dropping down. You can't touch them because if you hit them, you die. And you're dealing with other enemies who will come from different who will either come from the top of the screen or the sides of the screen, depending on what level you're on. And there are a couple of things to help you out. There are the multicolored discs off of the side of the pyramid at different levels, and you can basically lure the snake to where you are, where there's a circle. You jump on that circle, it takes you to the top, and the snake just can't stop himself. He'll jump off the side of the pyramid. You'll get points, and then you go back to the top of the pyramid, and you can finish the level. There are a lot of enemies in there. I'm not giving this game as much due as I could. I'm probably going to have to review it in Are You Experienced? So that's the top tens. Honorable mentions. Bubbles. This is a quirky game from Williams. I played it quite a bit in like 82 to 83, then I kind of got away from it for some reason. Basically, what it is, you're a bubble in a sink. Yes, a bubble in a sink. And you're basically trying to gather drops of water, I think. And basically, the more drops of water you gather, the bigger your bubble gets, and the slower you move, and the harder it is to control that bubble. And basically, you're trying to avoid large ants and razor blades and things like that in the sink. I mean, it's really funny. And you had to watch the drain of the sink because when the drain of the sink turned green, you had to make a beeline straight for the drain to get off that level and go on to the next one. Hard game, but yeah, it was really really weird. Burger Time. I could have put this in my top tens, but I never was a big fan of this game. I never was. I mean, I played it. I did okay at it, but it was really, really, it's really hard. It really, really is. And I mean, I see that game at the arcade in Brighton, right next to where I'm playing like either Ms. Pac-Man or Galaga or something. And every once in a while, I'm like, maybe I should play this. I'm like, nah. Even on free play because it can be really, really frustrating. My buddy Mark was really good at Burger Time. And I tried to adopt a lot of his strategies in that game, and I just couldn't grok it. I just couldn't do it. So I just kind of left it alone. But I put it here because it was a very popular game. Basically, what it is that you're trying to more or less make burgers, and there are different platforms to where the ingredients are. Like it'll be like buns, it'll be like the bottom bun, then it'll be the burger, then it'll be the lettuce, and then it'll be the top bun. And basically, what you had to do, you had to run over each part of the burger and put and basically knock it down to a weight, like I want to say it's a tray on the very bottom of the screen down from the platforms, and that's how you made the burgers. And once you made, I think it's like 4 burgers, got off the screen. Now the hard part was you have pickles chasing you, you have hot dogs chasing you, you have eggs chasing you, and they're constantly trying to trap you, and they're constantly trying to corner you, on a particular level to where they can, run into you and kill you. And you have pepper spray to defend yourself, because once you hit them with the pepper spray, then you can run through them and they won't kill you, so you can get away from them. And the trick was is that the trick to beating it was you had to get all of these pickles and eggs and hot dogs on one particular bun or piece of the burger, hit the pepper spray, and then just run over that burger, and then it would knock everything below it down into the tray. That was the fast way of doing it. Now you only had like what, 3 pepper shots, and the only way you could get more was to get the bonus object at the like on the second level in the middle of the screen, and that you would give you points and a bonus pepper shot. And unfortunately, as the game goes on, that gets a little bit harder and a little bit harder, because you know the enemies are getting faster and they're getting more intelligent, and they're making these elaborate traps to catch you in, and you have to really hoard your pepper shots for last results. For last results, because last resorts, excuse me, in order to score your points and make your burgers and get on to the next stage. But yeah, I wasn't that good at it. Okay, burning rubber. This one, the funny part is I was better at this game on the Commodore 64 than I ever was at the arcade. I don't know why. Basically, it's a more or less a vehicle combat kind of game. Top down, you're controlling a car, and there are various vehicles that are trying to knock you off the road and trying to kill you. And if that wasn't bad enough, then there were parts where the road would end and you would have to hit the jump button to jump the space between where the road ends and where the new road begins, and you could jump up and actually land on top of other vehicles for points. That's another thing you could do. As you went on in the game, you would encounter vehicles that were heavier and heavier and harder to move, and they would sort of like make a beeline for your car to try to bump you off the road. It's a fun game, but yeah, once another one of those that could be really, really frustrating. Um, like I said, I was better at it on the Commodore rather than the arcade. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe the gameplay was a little easier for me to deal with. I don't know. Food Fight. This is one of those really funny games from Atari. And I remember when Spanky's got it and when Milford Rec got it. And Trumbull Mall, I think Trumbull Mall Arcade ended up getting it at some point. But it was one of these where basically you're a chef running around a screen, and the other chefs are trying to kill you, and the only way you can fight back is to run over to these objects of food and throw the food at them and try to hit them. It's a fun game, I have to admit. It's really fun, it's really funny, But yeah, I mean, I liked that game a lot. I didn't play it as much as some. Mark was really good at it, and I tried to pick up tips from him, but somehow I was never quite as good as he was. He was just on a different level as far as video game play than I was back in those days. Frontline. This one, man, I burned so many quarters playing this game. Basically, you are a soldier and you're running. Basically, it's a vertical scrolling game. You're a soldier near the bottom of the screen, and you're basically trying to get to the enemy base to kill it with a grenade shot. You basically have a control stick to move your soldier left, right, up, down, diagonally, and then you have a dial on the right which turns your gun to the eight angles, up, down, left, right, and diagonal. And you kill you try to shoot or kill the enemy soldiers with grenades. The it's That's hard enough. I remember when I first started trying to play this game, I couldn't get off the first screen because it was just so tough. But I eventually I got better at it, and then once you get past the area with the soldiers, which is like landmines and pits and trees that you have to go around and so forth, and you have soldiers coming from the top of the screen, from the sides, and from the bottom, and you're constantly having to move and shoot, to get to the next part, which is the harder part, which is that now you start going up against enemy tanks. There are two different types of tanks. There's the small, like oval shaped tank, which is small, really fast, and shoots like machine gun rounds. And then there's the big tank, which is, basically octagonal shaped, and it shoots shells at you. And that's the hard part because not only can you get killed by getting hit with the shells, but the shells will detonate after a certain distance, and the explosion can kill you too. So, but also there are tanks of your own in the stage. You have like the oval shaped ones which shoots machine gun rounds, and then you have the big one which shoots the shells. And I just remember this game was just so hard. And the funny part is that it's just another one of those games I'm better at now than I was when I was 13 years old. It's really strange. The arcade in Brighton has it. Every once in a while, if I'm feeling adventurous, I will actually play it for a little while. Gravatar. This is one of the best games Atari ever put out. It's really challenging. I mean, the learning curve in this game is extremely steep. Basically, what it is that you control a spaceship, and you can go to different planets, and each planet has a score right next to it, which is the score you get when you clear it. Now, how do you clear it? Basically, you fly towards that planet, and gravity is in effect. Oh God, is gravity in effect? Basically, you fly towards the planet, and now you are like coming top down towards the planet, and basically the planet can be, it can be like an shaped like an asteroid, or it can look like a horizontal cave system, and on those are gun emplacements and fuel depots. You have a fire button, a thrust button, and a tractor beam button, which also activates your shields. Basically, what it is, you have to go to each planet and clear that planet of enemies, and also fuel depots. And then you have to basically boost out of the atmosphere. Meanwhile, you have a fuel count that is going down the more you use your thrust and everything like that. And of course, you have to use your thrust to counteract that particular plant's gravity. And the higher bonus score you see on the first screen, the tougher it is, and the higher the gravity it is, and the harder it is to get to the gun emplacements. And the gun emplacements are shooting multiple shells, and they're very accurate. And not only that, then you got to deal with the saucers coming off the side of the screen. They're trying to either shoot you or ram you, and that's if that's not trouble enough. I mean, I've seen my buddy Mark was really good at Gravatar. I was passable at it. I still had a lot of trouble with the high gravity worlds, but I mean, I've seen him like clear the whole screen of planets. There's a YouTube video I used to watch. I can't remember who it was by, but he was really good at Gravatar. I mean, to where he played that game for like 2, 3 hours and he recorded the whole thing. So yeah, Gravatar. Kangaroo. This is a quirky game by Atari. Basically, you're a kangaroo trying to basically rescue your kids, and you have monkeys trying to kill you by throwing apples at you, and so forth and so on. It's really weird because the next game in my list, these two are extremely similar, even though two different manufacturers made it. Yeah, Kangaroo. It was a fun game, but it was really really hard, really really challenging, and oh, I just remember it was popular for a little while, then it kind of fizzled out. But it was fun to play until you got frustrated with it, and it frustrated pretty much everybody, even the guys who were really good at it. And the next one on the list is Popeye, which is a which is a direct translation of the Popeye comic, and arguably, even though I won't say it because it's done in the art style of Popeye with, of course, a Japanese twist because Nintendo made it. Um, it could be said that it came out to coincide with the Popeye movie, but I think the Popeye movie came out in 1980, so maybe not. So basically, you're Popeye, and basically you're trying to collect the hearts on the first screen. It's hearts on the second screen. It's musical notes, but you're trying to collect the hearts that Olive Oil tosses down towards you, and and Bluto is trying basically to kill you, just like the comic strip, just like the cartoon, same thing. And of course, yeah, there is spinach, and there is the sea hag who likes to appear on the side of the screen and throw bottles at you, and you're trying to deal with all this, and yeah, it can be kind of tough, especially in the later stages because Bluto gets really really aggressive. And then it's it wasn't just so much a using the spinach to defeat him temporarily, but it was when you used it. You had to save it until you were at least halfway done collecting the hearts or the musical notes that Olive Oil was throwing at you. And of course, if you got hit by a bottle, if Bluto even touched you, and if the heart or musical note would reach the bottom of the screen and sink into the water, you would lose a life. So yeah, it got really really busy after like probably 5 screens. I never was that great at it. I was passable. I was okay. I wasn't great. Okay, Millipede, sequel to Centipede. Centipede came out in 81. Excuse me, 1980. Millipede came out in 1982, and this had more enemies, more just more action in general. I mean, I was watching a stream from Galloping Ghost Arcade. Shout out to Doc Mac. I was watching a stream off there where there's this one guy who was playing Millipede. And he was really good. He was really really good. But yeah, even he would get overwhelmed sometimes because you just had so many enemies on the screen. It just wasn't the centipede coming down, it was the spider or two spiders, depending on how far in the game you got. The spiders, the fleas, the mosquitoes, the snails, and just it just was crazy. It just got really, really nuts. I never was good at it. I tried to be, but I never was. Sinistar. Beware, I live. Yeah, that one. This game, man, people were obsessed with this game for a little while. Basically, it's a free roaming shooter. You can go in any direction. Basically, what it is, it's more or less a race. You have to get energy rocks from running into or shooting asteroids, picking them up, while your enemies are doing the same thing to create the Sinistar. And once they got enough pieces, here comes the Sinistar. And And after that you would have to lure it close and uh, launch your energy rocks, which turned into torpedoes, which would go after the Sinistar and kill him if you had enough. You had enough of them, and the Sinistar didn't track you down and kill you first. So, yeah, that game is one of the classics, if only for the sound effects. Moon Patrol, another classic. This game was pretty much everywhere. Trumbull Mall, not everywhere, but Trumbull Mall didn't have it, but one of the stores in Trumbull Mall did. I can't remember which one. I want to say it was Rexall, but I'm not 100% certain. Um, Basically, you're a moon buggy on the moon, and you're trying to get from point A to point Z. And each level that corresponds to a letter is fairly long and fairly challenging. And there were, you basically had to shoot aliens, shoot rocks in front of you, jump over craters, jump over mines, and so forth and so on until you got to the end. I saw a video on YouTube where there was this guy who was an expert at Moon Patrol where he got to the end. And then, of course, it starts over. Super Pac Man. This was the third in the. Or was it the. No, it was the third. Junior Pac Man was number four. But this was the third machine in line of the Pac Man franchise. You had Pac Man in 80, Miss Pac Man in 81, then this one in 82. I think this one came out in like late 82, like November or December, if I'm not mistaken, because as I'll talk about in story time, this game figured very, very strongly in the binge of 1982, which is a story that I'll get to, trust me. Basically, you're a Pac Man going through a maze with gates and keys laying around. You have to pick up as many keys you can, and there are fruits in various areas of the maze that could be locked away by gates, and you have to find the corresponding keys to open them. Or you can get one or the two of the super power pellets, which would turn you into Super Pac-Man, which is like four times bigger. The ghost can't kill him. You can hit the button to increase his speed and basically barge through the gates to get to the fruits and so forth. And of course, you had the regular power pellets, which would turn the ghosts purple, and you can go after them for points. And the fruit bonus was a little bit different because you had different kinds of things. It was like donuts and keys and apples and other stuff. And depending on what the match was, you would get a certain amount of points. Like if you got like a donut and a key, you get like say 200 points. If you got two keys together, you get 5,000 points. So the trick was you had to try to get in there and get it to when the two icons would match, and you would get extra points. That's how you got more points. And I think every four stages was a bonus stage. It's either four or five. They were all bonus stages. So basically, you had to run through as Super Pac-Man and run through the maze as quickly as you could to get all of the fruits, and to get bonus points for the end of the level. Super Pac-Man. I played this game a lot in 1982. The arcade in Brighton has Super Pac-Man, but it doesn't work correctly. Tax Scan. This game, I'm telling you, this game was fantastic. I loved it. It's a vector game by Sega. Basically you have spaceships in a particular formation, and you're flying. You're basically on the bottom. But you have the illusion of flying up, and you are shooting enemies, and as you shoot enemies, more of your ships would come down, and you could get them and actually add them to your formation for extra firepower. That was the first screen. But the second screen was the interesting one because it turned into like a 3D perspective that you had to fly through these rings to get to the next level, and it was not easy at all. It was a wonderful game, but I've only seen it in two particular places. The first place was in Rexall. Rexall had it for a little while, and the second place was the Lafayette Plaza Arcade. Those are the only two places I ever saw it. So yeah, tax scan. Time Pilot, one of the classics. I love Time Pilot. The arcade in Brighton has it. I play it every so often. Basically, you are a pilot in a fighter, and you are going through the various areas of, excuse me, eras of war. You start off in World War One, where you're shooting at biplanes, and then you go to World War Two, where you're shooting at Japanese Zeros and enemy like medium, excuse me, light bombers, and then you go to 1970, which is Vietnam, where you're shooting at is shooting at helicopters, which are launching heat-seeking missiles at you, which of course zero in on your ship, and you have to either evade them or shoot them. 1983, you're up against jet fighters that are just as maneuverable and fast as your fighter, and they're shooting at you and they're launching missiles at you. And then you go to 2001, where now you're in outer space and you're shooting at saucers, flying saucers, which have one that's like a semi heat seeker. It'll go at you, but you can easily evade it. And then there's just a regular shot they take at you. But I think you could shoot those. You get through each level by killing the mothership. In World War One, it's a dirigible. In World War Two, it's a big bomber, like a B-29 or something like that. In 1970, it's a huge bomber like a B-52. In Oh, I'm sorry. I take that back. I've missed one. In 1970, actually, it's a dual prop helicopter. In 1983, it's a B-52 bomber, and in 2001, it's a huge flying saucer. And you would just basically kill that to go to the next one. Wonderful game. I absolutely love it. Tutankhamun. Oh man, this game. This game was like really a real frustration for me. Um, let's see who had it. I think Trumbull Mall had it for a little while. Milford Rec definitely had it. And I think the mall, I mean, excuse me, the arcade in the Connecticut Post Mall had it. Um, Basically, you're going through the various tombs and trying to get collect keys to get to the end to collect the treasures. I'm making it simple, but it really isn't, because you had all kinds of enemies chasing you, and you basically had to time it to get to your keys and get to the treasures to get to the end of the level. And as you progressed in the game, it got more and more, a lot harder. It was really hard because even though it was like a side-scrolling game, and you could go up, down, left, and right, you could only shoot left and right. So yeah, that made it really, really tough to deal with. Xevious. This game wasn't all that popular, at least not to me, but it was one of those games where I think the difficulty curve was a little too steep. I think that's what kind of held it back, or at least that's how it was for me, because I could get through like the first two screens, first two levels, and then all of a sudden I would just get completely run off the game on a rail. Basically, you're controlling a fighter craft, and you're basically moving along a landscape, and you have various enemies trying to kill you. You have fighters that you can shoot at, and then you have ground targets that you can bomb. And the trick was you wanted to destroy the mothership at the end of, I think, like second or third level or something like that, and so you can move on in the game. It was popular for a time, but I never really was really that big on it. I liked it for what it was, but I just thought it got too hard too fast. Zaxxon. This game is hilarious because nowadays everybody hates this game. I mean, I remember I belong to a couple of groups on Facebook, and when this game comes up, it's like the ratio of people who like it to people who hate is at least 10 to 1. At least 10 to 1. I mean, I never had a problem with it. I mean, it's a 3D shooter with a, oh, what is it called? I can't remember the viewpoint it is. It's like three-quarter view. And you're basically invading bases and shooting fuel tanks to replenish your ship's fuel, which uses fuel at a certain rate, so you have to shoot the tanks. And then you have to raise your ship to get through the walls, because there's only one particular height that you be at in one particular location where the hole is. You have to be in that location at the right height, otherwise you crash into the wall. Then you go out into space and you're shooting against enemy fighters, which are coming at you from different angles and so forth. And then you get to the Zaxxon's base, more shooting, gun emplacements, radar emplacements, tanks, enemy fighters that are on the ground, so forth and so on, while avoiding missiles that are shooting out of the missile hole silo holes in the ground. So you have to deal with shots from two different directions, and then you reach the enemy Zaxxon robot. Now this was hard because you had to figure out the exact height where its missile was, which is on the right side of the robot at a certain height. And if you shot it while the missile was still in its launch tube on the robot, you would destroy the robot for, I think, 1,000 points. And if you only shot the missile, you'd have to shoot the missile like 8 times, I think. And if you shot the missile while it was coming at you, it would be only 200 points, I think, and then you would start again. And now you're moving faster. You're consuming more fuel, more enemies. They shoot more. The missiles come out of the ground faster, so on and so forth. And wash, rinse, repeat. I was halfway decent at Robotron. I mean, not Robotron. Sorry, I was halfway decent at Zaxxon, but yeah, I knew some guys who were really, really good at it who could put up like what 150,000 points without any major difficulty. Zookeeper. This one, man. I have such a love-hate relationship with this game. I really do. Basically, you are a zookeeper trying to keep the animals penned in. It's basically a long rectangular area where the cage is in the middle where the animals start coming out of. And basically, as you run along the perimeter of the square, you're putting down like this, you're laying bricks basically. And the animals trying to get out are, depending on what kind of animals they are uh, in the game, they're breaking the bricks as they're trying to get out. And as they get out, now they're starting to run along that ledge where your character is, and then you have to jump over them for points. And then there are these animal catching nets that you can use to put the animals back in the center. And the thing was, you had to time it to where you're near the end of the level and all these animals are out, and then you just go for the net and you grab it, and then you catch them and put them back in the middle, and then you're basically just running around the perimeter of the area laying more bricks to keep them in until the time runs out in the level. And then you would bonus points for the animals that you kept inside the pen area. And I think it ranged from, oh my god, I want to say ranged from like 1,000 points to like 1,000,000 points, depending on what the animal was. And I mean, I've seen guys put up these ridiculous scores on that game, but I really wasn't that good at it. Yeah, so those are my top tens and honorable mentions. If you have any thoughts or stories involving any of these games, including your own experiences or whatever else you may have on your mind, just get a hold of me at arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. Okay, let's go on to Are You Experienced?
I'm too old for this. hiding in front seats like a teenager.
Opie, I think I'm getting too old for this stuff.
I'm getting too old for this.
Listen, you was born too old for this.
I'm getting too old for this.
You're getting too old for this. Lying wet arse to my heather chasing other men's cattle.
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
Maybe we're getting too old for this. What do you think, huh?
I'm not too old for this shit. I'm not too old for this shit. You will not. We're not too old for this shit.
We're not too old for this shit.
We're not too old for this. Say it like you believe.
We're not too old for this shit.
Yeah.
We're not too old for this
I'm not
shit.
gonna buy a hemorrhoid cushion.
We're not too old for this shit.
Are you experienced, Robotron? Okay, I've got my personal feelings about this game. I'm going to give you the information first, and then I'll go into talking about it. Just taken straight from Wikipedia, of course. Robotron 2084, also referred to as Robotron, is an arcade video game developed by Eugene Jarvis and Larry DeMar of VidKids and released by Williams Electronics in 1982. It's a shoot-'em-up with two-dimensional graphics. The game is set in 2084 in a fictional world where robots have turned against humans in a cybernetic revolt. The aim is to defeat endless waves of robots, rescuing surviving humans, and earning as many points as possible. Robotron popularized, I can talk really, I can, the twin joystick control scheme, one that had previously been used in Arctic Electronics Mars and Taito's Space Dungeon, both from 1981 and originated with Gunfight in 1975. Excuse me. Robotron was critically and commercially successful. Yes, indeed it was. Praise amongst the critics focused on the game's intense action and control scheme. The game is frequently listed as one of Jarvis's best contributions to the video game industry, and I will not argue with that. Robotron arcade cabinets have since become sought-after collector's items. It was ported to numerous platforms. Yes, it was. Okay, to talk about that, let's just put it this way. When I was a kid in 1982, and this game came out, this game was, you want to talk about learning curve? This game had a hell of a learning curve. My God, did it have a learning curve. This game started out innocently enough. You could probably get to like level 3 or 4, maybe even 5. Just having basic knowledge of the game. But I mean, after level 5 going forward, the party just starts and does not let up. I mean, this game to me in 1982 was intimidation personified. I mean, the most complex game out there at the time was Stargate, also done by Williams Electronics. But the control scheme and the action and all the various enemies and so forth, yeah, that's what made that game intimidating. This game, the controls are simple. The first 8 levels are doable. I mean, if you had anything on the ball, you could get through the first 8 levels. But from level 9 onward, it was a major test of your reflexes, anticipation, nerve, ability to think on the fly, and it just doesn't let up. It never did. I wasn't that great at the game, and only through owning like Williams Arcade Classics for the PlayStation 1, and and the same game for PlayStation 2, and being able to play it whenever I wanted to. And there was a time where I was living with my roommate, and her and we would just have massive Robotron sessions because we both wanted to get better at the game. But that's how I kind of got better at the game. And the funny part is that now I'm putting up a personal best. I mean, I put up a personal best of almost 900,000 a couple of weeks ago, and that still blows my mind. I mean, full disclosure, I'm 50 years old. I mean, I've been playing video games for well over 40 years, and that I was painfully average at that game for a long time. I mean, your average score in Robotron's like 200,000 or so forth, between 200 and 250,000. Anything over that, you were considered good. If you could get anywhere near 1,000,000 points, you were something of an expert at the time. But I mean, I knew this one dude in my neighborhood, this dude called Rockbox, His real name was Robert, but his nickname was Rockbox. And I remember one time I was at the news corner, and they had a Robotron machine there, and he was there, and he's playing it, and he is just killing the game. He's on a mission. He is just wrecking the game, and the news corner was notorious for putting their games at the highest difficulty settings in order to get more people to spend money on them. I mean, that was common knowledge to most people who played video games in my hometown. But I mean, he is just cranking that game, and I didn't know he was that good at that game at the time. And then sometime later, I mean, I'm talking with a bunch of my friends that I grew up with in the neighborhood, and they were and somebody mentioned his name, and somebody said, yeah, he's really good at Robotron. I'm like, yeah, I saw him, and he was really good. But the expert that I have seen who can crank this game and just rock it with very little effort is Greg Hansen. Yes, Greg Hansen from Arcade Impossible. Look that up on YouTube, guys, and look him up on the times where he streams on Twitch. Greg is really, really, really good at Robotron. He's expert. He did a stream, I want to say like 2 years ago, maybe three. It might have been 3 years ago, where he basically was playing a Robotron machine which had the high scores, or not high scores, had the score display modified. I think in the classic Robotron it turns over 10 million points. I think with the modification one it turns over at 100 million. I think what he was going to do is try to turn that machine over, which required him to play for at the very least 12 hours or something like that. And so he had his Robotron machine in his basement, and he had a setup where he could sit down, and his wife was bringing him food and drink, and I was watching him play it. I would, get off of Twitch, go, do some things around the house and go to work and, do other stuff. I'd come back and he's still playing it. And I think he had to tap out somewhere about 85 million or something like that. I can't remember. I'll talk to him about it because I'm going to have him. He's probably going to be one of the first interviews on the show, if not the first. I got a hold of him on Instagram, and he's down to do an interview, and I'm excited about that because I think this is one of the coolest dudes on the streaming circuit, streaming/YouTube circuit. So yeah, I'm gonna have him on the show, and we're gonna talk about that because yeah, I was just amazed watching this guy just crush this game. He was really, really good. I mean, there are guys who are even better than him, but just seeing a guy who's that good on that level, it's just amazing to me. I was thinking at the time to myself as I'm watching him, I'm like, okay, this is one of the things in life not to do. Don't play Greg Hansen at Robotron. Don't play doubles with him, because you might be waiting if you are going to play doubles with him, go first, because you might be waiting for quite some time before you get your crack at it. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I put up my personal best of like 891,000, and I was impressed and boggled at the same time because I'm like, in video gaming terms, I'm kind of an old man, and I'm find myself getting better at some games at this age than when I was at 13. It's really, really weird. But anyway, that's Robotron. And if you have any questions, information, critiques, if I said something that was incorrect, please, by all means, correct me. I'm not proud. This is my first solo podcast. I want to get better at it. So if you've got anything to let me know about, just get a hold of me at arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. Okay, onward to arcade review. arcade review. Okay, let me give you a little bit of a preview here first. Um, Somewhere around episode 3 or 4, I finally just said, you know what? If I'm going to review arcades, then I've got to review the arcades I grew up with, and that requires me to be really, really objective. And I'm just gonna tell you now. I'm doing this in trying to be as fair and as objective and as impartial as possible, knowing that these places were, you know, near and dear to my heart, and when each of them went away, a little piece of me died with them. You know, I mean, that's just how it is. So anyway, so I'm gonna start with the Trumbull Mall Arcade. Now, you guys know that I've already done arcade rundown about the Trumbull Mall Arcade. I've done. I've told the story about how I discovered the arcade in Trumbull Mall, and that just set me on a particular path in life. And I just, of course, I'm. This is near and dear to my heart, but I'm going to be fair. Now, as I've said before, when I've done arcade review, there are 5 criteria: location, selection, ambiance, functionality, value. Um, and each one of these criteria is rated from 1 to 10 with half points. So, without any further ado, let's do this. Trumbull Mall Arcade location. I gave it a 7.5. Trumbull Mall was fairly easy to get to. It was 2 miles away from my house, and I walked that distance more times than I care to even admit, in all kinds of weather, whether it be rain, sun, snow, you know, early morning, late at night. Yeah, I walked to and from that place a lot. But there were also 4 bus lines that went to Trumbull Mall. The number 3 bus, which was Madison Avenue. Number 4 was Park Avenue. Number 8 was Main Street, which is the one I took the most because um, the closest bus stop to my house was Main Street, although Chopsy Hill Road was a close second. Um, I lived on the west end of my home street, and Chopsy Hill Road was on the east end of my home street. So, if I wanted to go to the mall, and if I missed the Main Street bus and didn't feel like waiting half an hour, I just walk down and take the number 12. Or I would just say screw it and just, meander my way on up there. So yeah. It also was right off of Connecticut Route 15, which is the Merritt Parkway, which is a highway which goes all the way from the Connecticut state line and heading east. I think it terminates at Interstate 91 in North Haven. I think that's where it stops. I may be wrong. I can't remember. And I don't feel like pulling up Google Maps to confirm it. So, yeah, 7.5. Plenty of ways to get to it. And, it wasn't, like I said, just easy to get to, no matter which way you were coming from, north, south, east, west. It was right off Main Street. And it was, basically it was nestled in between Main Street and Madison Avenue, so anyone coming from Trumbull could come down either one of those streets to get to it. Um, and of course, you could take public transportation to get to it as well as off the highway. Selection, 8.5. Now, I had to give it high marks because Trumbull Mall Arcade always had a good selection of games going all the way back to the late 70s when I first found it. Um, I think the total of games they had, I think the highest number of games was somewhere between 40 and 50. I think it was that high. They started out, of course, with arcade games, had 2 pool tables, and of course they had pinball machines. Um, they had all that in 1979 when I first discovered the place, or excuse me, 78. Excuse me. Then they phased out the pool tables when Space Invaders hit, and that craze happened when people were constantly on that game, and then it just kept going in that direction. Space Invaders, then it was Galaxian, then it was Asteroids, then it was Pac-Man, then it was Donkey Kong, and so on and so forth, just going that way. And with each successive year, you know, with the exception of the USA versus Russia hockey game that came out in 1980, it was all arcade games and pinball machines. And then finally, in I want to say 83, maybe 84, I think they phased out all the pinball machines and they just went strictly arcade machines at that point. Probably 83 or 84, somewhere in there. But so yeah, I give it an 8.5 because not only did they have a lot of machines, they were rotating machines in and out at on a fairly regular basis. Ambiance, I give this a 5 because the place had normal fluorescent lighting and bare walls and carpeting. Very rarely did they have any music playing over the PA. And if they did have music playing, it was usually a radio station or something. I mean, it wasn't anything major. I think once or twice they tried to get some atmosphere by using like yellow colored fluorescent lights in the ceiling, and there were a couple times they just basically shut most of the lights off, and to just kind of let the